This happened about 3 years ago, in the first house that I ever bought on my own. It wasn't big, just a 2-story place on a quiet street where nothing ever really happened. You know, the kind of neighborhood where people left their porch lights on or forgot to lock their cars. Where the loudest thing at night was usually someone's dog barking 2 blocks away. It felt safe. And that's an important detail, because nothing about what happened would have been nearly as terrifying if the house, or this neighborhood, hadn't felt safe. It was a Thursday, and I remember that because I had work the next morning and had no reason to be awake past midnight. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, watching a show, and a lamp was still on in the corner, casting a warm yellow glow across the living room. I woke up around 1:07 a.m. I know the exact time because I checked the microwave clock afterward to make sure that I wasn't dreaming. I didn't wake up to a sound, but a feeling. You know, that feeling when someone walks into a room and you can feel them staring at you, and it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I pushed myself up on my elbows, and I looked toward the hallway that led to the stairs and the bedrooms. And that's when I saw him. Halfway down the hallway stood a barefoot, thin man wearing pale blue scrubs or hospital-style pajamas, wrinkled and hanging off him like they didn't belong on his body. His hair was uneven, like chunks had been hacked away with dull scissors. But he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at my family photos that were on the wall, tilting his head slightly to the side, like he was trying to understand them or recognize them. And for a full 2 seconds, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. It felt like spotting something impossible, like a rendering error in reality. And then he slowly turned his head toward me. He didn't look angry, and his eyes didn't have a wild look to them, but I could see that he was confused, deeply, painfully confused. "Hey," he said softly. Not threatening, not aggressive. He just said, "I'm looking for the door." My heart dropped straight through my body. I shot up off the couch and yelled. Well, I don't even remember what I said. Probably just, "Who are you?" or "Get out." He flinched violently. He slammed back against the wall like I'd fired a gun at him. "I'm not supposed to be here," he started muttering. "Not supposed to be here, not supposed to be here," while hitting himself repeatedly in the head. And then he bolted. Past me, he ran through my kitchen, yanked open the back door, which I'd later learned that he'd forced open, and disappeared into the yard. By the time that I ran over and reached the door, he was gone. The police came within 10 minutes. They searched the yard and my street and the alley behind my house, but they didn't find anything. One of the officers told me that he probably climbed a fence and cut through the neighboring properties. He was likely a drug user or possibly off a medication of some kind. "Well, he didn't hurt you, and he didn't take anything, so that's good," said the officer. But it didn't feel good. It felt unfinished, like something had entered my life and left the door open behind it. They did the usual and took a report, and they advised me to replace the back door frame or change the locks and reinforce my doors. But none of that advice helped. I didn't sleep that night, or the next for that matter. And about 3 days later, the house started to smell. It was faint. It didn't smell like rot or garbage, just stale. You know, like damp insulation or old sweat. I scrubbed everything and mopped my floors. I cleaned the fridge and I took out my trash, but the smell still lingered. I blamed my stress. You know, anxiety does weird things to your senses sometimes. But then I noticed that food started to go missing. Not a lot, just a few slices of bread and a few pieces of deli meat. And I noticed a half bottle of water had been drank. Small enough that I questioned myself. Maybe I'd woke up in the middle of the night, got a snack, still half asleep and not remembered, or downed a half a bottle of water. But I live alone, and it started to add up. So I started keeping mental notes. About 3 weeks after the break-in, I woke up to a sound directly above my bedroom. It sounded like a dragging noise. It was slow, like someone pulling fabric across wood. My anxiety was already through the roof, so I held my breath. Suddenly it stopped. I exhaled, but then I heard a soft thud right above my bed. I immediately turned on my phone flashlight and aimed it at the ceiling. Obviously, I didn't see anything. I was in my room alone, and I told myself, it's probably just squirrels or rats in the attic. It was an old house, and old houses make noises. But here's the detail that I'd forgotten until that night. There's a crawl space right in between the two floors, accessed by a square panel in the hallway ceiling. I'd never opened it. I didn't even own a ladder tall enough to get to it. But I stood in the hallway the next morning, staring up at that panel. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It looked normal. It was still sealed and undisturbed. And I told myself that I was spiraling. It was almost a month after the first incident that I saw him again. I was brushing my teeth before bed, and the bathroom door was open. And in the mirror, I saw movement behind me. Just a flicker, like someone stepping past the doorway, and I froze. I finally got up the courage to slowly turn around, and I looked into the hallway, but it was empty. I stepped into the hallway, and that's when I noticed it. The crawlspace panel. It wasn't flush anymore. One corner hung slightly lower, just enough to create a thin black slit in the ceiling, and all I could do was stare at it. And suddenly, something inside shifted. Sound of weight adjusting between wooden beams, and my entire body went cold. "Hello?" I whispered, but it was nothing but silence. And then from above me, a voice, just a soft mutter, "I'm trying to leave." All at once my vision tunneled. I knew it was him. It was that same confused tone. "I can't find the door," he said. And I didn't wait. I ran into my bedroom, I locked my door, and I called 911 with shaking hands. And this time I stayed on the line. The officers rushed out to my home, and they searched the house. They cleared it. They said they didn't find anything. And then they brought a small ladder, and when they pushed into the crawlspace panel, they fully opened it, and the smell poured down the physical hallway. Worse than before. I could tell it was human this time, like somebody had been in a tight space for a long period of time without showering. Stale breath and sweat. They shined a flashlight up there, and I heard scrambling, frantic movement. A body trying to wedge itself deeper between beams. There was a struggle, and they pulled him out. He fought weakly. He didn't understand why he was being removed, and the crawl space was covered in empty food wrappers, water bottles. It was my missing food. The insulation pulled him to a nest-like pile. He'd been living above me for weeks. The officers later told me that when he ran that first night, he must have panicked and climbed into the crawl space through a vent or an access from the outside. And once inside, disoriented, he likely couldn't figure out how to leave the same way. In his state, the house probably became a maze. He kept repeating the same thing as they let him out. "This isn't my house. I'm supposed to go home. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here." Over and over again. But here's what no one could answer. There were signs that he'd been moving around at night, dust disturbed in the hallway, and the pantry door slightly ajar, small things shifted around the house. He hadn't stayed up there the whole time. He had to have come down, quietly, while I slept, while I watched TV, while I sat 10 feet below him, completely unaware. The thought that he have been stood outside my door again, and I wouldn't even have known. That's what stayed with me. I rushed and moved out 3 months later. Not because I thought he would come back, but because I couldn't sit in that living room without imagining someone above me, listening, breathing. Even worse when I tried to go to sleep at night. Even now, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I listen for footsteps. I listen for the soft drag of something moving slowly across wood above me. Because once you know there's a space above you that someone could fit, you never really feel alone again.